to bring them all in. Everyone here, Brandon Miller, he's the digital marketing manager at Land O'Lakes. Missy Pearce Nadler, she's the head of media North America, electronic arts, and Brad Simmons, the chief marketing officer at Figure. I see Brandon. Up there's Missy. Hey. And just meet Brad.
Hello.
Hey. Well, welcome, guys. And Missy, I want to once again say congratulations for your promotion. That's
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you.
And it's good, like there's actually been some good things happening this year. I like to point that out. And, again, for you with Brandon, you had a little girl, Hallie. How is she doing this year? They had a baby first beginning of the year.
She's doing great. Just cutting her first teeth over the last week. So that's been a treat.
That's awesome. Now, Brad, anything, you get married, win $1 million, anything like that?
Trying to think. Sure. This year is that the time frame?
This year we're looking for the positive, because that's what this panel is about. Because really, as I said, it's there's been a lot of challenges you guys are facing, but it's sort of figuring out how to move forward, and then even not only have you guys figured out what to do to move forward, but you've been thriving, and that's what we really want to talk about. But let's backtrack a little bit before we get started. Tell me a little bit how you experienced the crisis, with your company, not at home with Hallie, and in terms of with TV, how you guys experienced that initially.
Sure. Well, it's interesting. I think the biggest challenge for us, I think, right out of the gate was sort of our had to do with our supply chain, right? Like we. A lot of people don't know that Land O'Lakes is much more than a butter company, right? We're an agri-science company, we're an animal nutrition company, and then also a dairy and butter company. And when COVID hits, it sort of throws all of our standard operating procedures in sort of out the window, right? We have a food service division, which now the demand is nearly gone, and then we've got a retail butter business, which the demand has never been higher in our company's history. And so those represent some real challenges for our supply chain, particularly in our manufacturing facilities, who were deemed essential frontline workers. And so once the safety hurdles were cleared, they were, some of our people in our manufacturing plants were some of the very first, people back on the job. We're all lucky we get to work from home. And so I think they did a tremendous job getting, reacting and moving. And so we thought, okay, well, we better react and move quickly too. And so one of the first things we did from a marketing standpoint was we put together a Facebook social video, which basically thanked our employees by name. Everybody that was putting themselves in a bit of harm's way to keep, America's food supply chain going, really. And, for a not very big amount of money, we got a ton of positive traction. I loved what Alexis said about relationships. You've got mothers thanking fathers, mothers thanking sons, you got friends thanking each other. And, my joke is, you've seen, whenever you do a recap deck or whatever, you always find the one comment that was so great. Well, it's like the entire thread of comments was just full of people thanking each other and all this positivity in these local towns where our plants are sort of one of the core businesses. And so just little things like that to show people that they're appreciated in and amongst all of the chaos, I think really went a long way.
Yeah. And well, Missy, I know, this obviously with EA, you guys were in a good position to really, with COVID, but so how did you respond? It's still, even though you're you don't want to take advantage of that. You don't want to come across opportunistic. So what did you guys do?
Yeah, exactly. It was a really interesting moment in time, I think, for gaming as the stay-at-home order started across the country, and the gaming entertainment space was actually having like a pretty hot moment, and we were seeing huge lift in time spent, duration of time, and frequency of our players actually playing games. So we can see all this data through our partnerships with the consoles, but we had to think about, as an organization, what our content response would look like in a time of crisis, because as you said, we really didn't want to appear that we were capitalizing on this really critical moment where it is a crisis. This isn't something we'd gone through before. So it was more about that long-term ROI and what do we stand for as an organization. So we started thinking really quickly about this, I would say, right as we started our work from home and we were seeing some of those orders. So instead of increasing any of our paid media across our portfolio, we really just continued with any planned activations. So that was step one, was not really taking all this budget, pulling budget forward, but really proceeding only with any campaigns that we had. And instead, we focused on an initiative called Stay and Play. So leaning a little bit into social responsibility, encouraging our players to stay at home while also being able to be social with their friends while playing our games. So even though it wasn't necessarily a paid component, it was run through our community teams, through our owned and operated channels, pushing the messages. We did see a lot of learnings in the first few weeks, in the first month, that helped us to guide a little bit of our paid media moving forward as we started to pick up on those campaigns where we did have media plans already kind of in the works for early COVID time.
Yeah, I mean, and look, Brad, for you really need to stay in connection with your, customers. I mean, it's a very personalized business. How did you keep contact and keep that connection with them during a time when you can't go visit people, you can't go talk to people?
Yeah, so we, we leverage in our, we're pretty high touch. So we're in consumer lending and we're extremely high touch with our customers because it's, essentially our kind of core product, our beachhead product is a home equity line, right? So people are tapping into their home to either renovate or pay off debt, just make better financial decisions. So when you're touching a piece of somebody's home, you want to be very high contact, right? So for us, especially during COVID, and we've been doing this before, but we have an entirely digital experience when it comes to lending, right? All the way from the application, which takes like 5 minutes, to an online notary, right, via video or FaceTime, and or doing video or FaceTime with our customers. We have that capability and capacity. We do it whenever we can. It's really important for us to, have that high touch, and especially be face-to-face with our customers, because this is a big decision for them financially.
So, and now you mentioned before, I think that you had done any, like what we're doing now. Did you have FaceTime calls and things like that? Was that a way for you to keep in touch?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, I mean, obviously you just utilize we hate our technology, but we love it because it really does keep us all connected. And so now getting into how I introduced you guys, saying that, okay, you actually ended up being able to thrive. Missy, let's start with you because you found really something exciting with YouTube. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say that we definitely leaned into the opportunity to test during this time. So we didn't really push up any budgets, but we wanted to proceed with any campaigns or initiatives that we already had in our pipeline. So we had a Sims campaign launching in late March in North America. And it was interesting because we already had a ton of research on consumption for our Sims audience, which was 12 to 17. And we knew that linear was on the decline. And at the same time, we saw, because of COVID, because of stay at home, similar to with gaming, we actually saw, and working with our partners at Google, we learned that time spent with YouTube was increasing, especially for this younger Sims audience. So we kind of felt like it was the perfect time to test evolving our plan and our media mix in a new kind of modern way. And that brought us to what we call internally and with Google as Project TRP. So we had two hypotheses with this test. The first was that we would actually be able to achieve as many TRPs with our YouTube campaign as we could through traditional linear TV. And then the second hypothesis was that we'd actually be able to have the same impact as TV, because we know that TV is still this reach vehicle, and our campaign goals were really to reach that Gen Z audience. So it was a little bit less of a test of changing the way we activated the campaign, but actually it was more a shift in how we were measuring. So TRP is traditionally a linear measurement metric. And so we worked with Nielsen. We had all of our YouTube activity tagged with a Nielsen tag. So we were able to actually report out on that TRP metric. And we couldn't have planned it better because the results were actually really, really surprising. We were able to exceed our TRP goals, which was the 70% reach 3 times that we would have looked at on linear TV. And we actually saw a 73% increase, if I'm getting the number right, 76.5% increase in our ad recall.
That's 3.5%.
I know, it's big, but we did see not only the reach, but also most importantly for us was that impact. So we definitely leaned in the time and it's not necessarily like, I don't want to say we would replace linear TV at all, but it was just thinking about for different audiences at different times, what would the approach to video look like?
Wow. And so Brad, what about you? How did you adjust your marketing strategy as you kind of moved forward more so into the crisis and as things were, you're trying to make things as normal as possible?
Yeah. I mean, I think similar to Missy, we saw we were in, pretty heavily in linear prior to COVID, and then we stopped, right? Like about mid-March, we just kind of cut all kind of offline stuff out, and you could just see, you see the numbers, especially in the younger segments, but our target's 50 plus. But you can see in the younger segments, and even at 50 plus, like linear live TV, it's down, right? Nielsen, it's down 30 to 40%. Connected TV's up, 40 to 50% in viewership, and just across like these different platforms and solutions, right? Whether it's Hulu or Roku or Sling or Peacock, or like there's like 1,000 of them out there. But yeah, we shifted our spend from there to connected TV, and then layered on a lot of targeting. So we do direct mail because we do pre-screened offers of credit. What that allows us to do is essentially take that target audience, upload it into something like the Trade Desk, and then specifically target our folks that we've sent mail to, like similar to Missy said, like it's like, we want multiple exposures through multiple channels through connected TV allows us to do that, right? Via uploading the files, we can specifically target those that we know we've just mailed a piece to, and get multiple exposures even before it hits home, and then after we know it was delivered.
So it sounds like it was more about the audience for you at this point.
Yeah, less about the programming, and and I guess the gotcha a little bit on that is the fact that linear, especially if you buy on a remnant basis, is much cheaper than connected and targeting. You're talking about, you can get a few dollars CPM, right, for linear compared to connected TV, where if you're specifically targeting, you're going to pay anywhere from $20 to $25 CPMs. And then if you go broader, you can pay less, but it's definitely a different cost, but you're also, we're very specific and narrow on who we're targeting. We know they're pre-approved. We know that our product can help them. And so we're just trying to get in front of them as often as possible.
Right. Now with you, Brandon, I know that you discovered something kind of interesting trending. Chicken farming was trending. Am I getting that right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So actually it was at one of the upfront presentations, we heard that one of the highest, fastest increasing search queries during the COVID window was backyard chicken farming and backyard chicken coops. So people were coming out, buying a couple of chickens, and that was a big part of what the line sort of is. COVID sort of crammed 5 years worth of roadmaps into about 5 months, and so we really leaned in on to some of the direct to consumer selling, which maybe we hadn't done as much before, e-commerce, digital retail partnerships, and now that these chicken owners have had them for a couple of months, the pun is all of that work is now coming home to roost. It would have. I'm going to be honest.
Lead him into
I know.
that.
I know. We talked about the lead in, and it was sad. I'm so glad. I'm really happy that there isn't a live audience in this case, because the groans would have just been deafening. So the silence is much preferred.
No, but I will say, Brandon, he said it to me and Missy, and I'm saying, you need to tell us, you need to use that. So, but also you guys started, changing up your marketing strategy a little bit as well. And part of that is with the farmers and letting people know more about you guys. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. And that's sort of one of the things that I think is one of the hidden secrets of Land O'Lakes, is that we're a farmer-owned co-op. Land O'Lakes, it's been around forever. It's the butter everybody has had, but we've been a co-op for almost 100 years, 100 years in July. And so, and even pre-COVID, we've really been leaning into telling the stories of our farmer members that are ultimately producing the milk that, turns into the butters and cheeses. And, that's something that we've, continued to accelerate. It seems like people are really craving relationships. They're really craving connection, in this world of, we're all doing video conferences and things like that, I think the path we were on sort of, it was a good time to be on that path, because as we've made some of those connections between farmer and, our audiences, it's really, we've seen some positive outcomes from it.
Yeah. And I want to get to the one more question I have for you guys. But before I do, I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question for them, please raise your hand and someone will send you an unmute request, and you can just unmute yourself and wait to be called on, because they definitely want to hear from you. But Brad, I'll start with you for this. Just what is the key takeaway? What have you really learned from what you've been experiencing now, and that you'd like to share with people? What do they need to know to help them and for yourself to move forward with?
Yeah, I think the important thing to look at here is, especially as we're coming out of this, is these behaviors are just not going to change during COVID. Like, I think it's rewiring and reprogramming folks on what they consume, right? If you just look at, I think we were talking about it, Lisa, like the news and sports was where our bread and butter was for, not Brandon, the bread and butter. There you go.
That wasn't planned.
That was all Brad.
That was Brad. But that was like, news and sports is pretty much like what people watch live anymore, right? Like everything else is like on demand. So even that now has shifted, where like viewership of the NBA finals was like 50% of what it typically is, right? NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, same thing. It's like 60% less viewership than it was prior. So like, I think people's, like consumption patterns have changed, especially for the target audience. So my recommendation would be like, dig into that, right? And really figure out how things have changed and where you need to shift. Because, now I'm not gonna, I did, kind of like when some of the sports came back, I was like, great, sports is back. We're gonna start buying, linear on sports. And I was like, oh, that actually didn't work very well. And now I get numbers from Nielsen and I'm like, everyone's on connected TV, nobody's watching stuff live. And so it's like, we just had to shift.
How about Brandon, for you?
No, I couldn't agree more. Like the idea of, back, the whole back to normal thing that everybody says, but it's like, yeah, the changes, again, I think they were trends that were going to end up happening anyway. Like the trends toward connected TV, towards social watching, towards social selling, all those sorts of things were on the horizon anyway. And what this has done, I think, is sort of just put an accelerant on it. And this crew, particularly people that are ready to be nimble and flexible and capitalize on it, they're the ones that are going to be at an advantage.
Well, particularly when I know you didn't really go into this, but with your farmers and getting people to know, like you dove into video with them, and that's so organic. It's done. You have them do videos. Talk about that just briefly. We don't have a lot of time, but I really think that's an aspect of
again, it just comes back to the authenticity of our farmer ownership. And so we whenever it makes sense to, we'll lean into that membership base there. They've made, videos for us. They've submitted recipes that we've used. We're a CPG company. We have a recipes page like anybody, but we've used some of our own farmer recipes, and they've gotten a lot of good traction. So yeah, I think, wherever you can authentically build those relationships, that's lean into that. And that's sort of what I expect we'll continue to do.
Yeah. And Missy, of course, I mean, all the success you guys found with YouTube, you think you're going to be doing with any of your other games?
Yes, yeah, and I couldn't help but even what Brad said resonated, just because with our sports titles, like FIFA and Madden, when the NFL schedule kind of came out and we were proceeding, we were excited because we have, traditional commercials running in a bunch of Monday night games, Thursday night games, Sunday games, and then schedules start to change because of COVID. So even there, it wasn't that same reliance that we were expecting, but definitely with our testing, we went global. So Sims was North America. We launched a similar test in Germany, UK, and Japan for Apex, which is our Battle Royale game. And then as well for FIFA. And then something that I'm also working on is a playbook. So how do we put together recommendations like length of flight and frequency, the asset mix, YouTube? So building on this test to really lean into this new way of measuring YouTube as a complement to linear TV.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Well, I think, Steve, you have any questions for these guys?
Yeah, we do. Brad, you mentioned the connection between direct mail and OTT or CTV.
Yep.
It's interesting. You're about like the fifth marketer that I've heard over the last few months who have been surprised by the effectiveness of direct mail, especially during the pandemic. But that link between physical mail and CTV, what kind of match rate were you able to achieve there? What sort of, and what did you learn about making that connection between among the oldest styles of direct marketing and among the newest?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we've been doing this for like kind of this overlap for about a year now, where we're hitting them on connected TV and those that we send mail. And the great thing about direct mail is it's one-to-one, right? It's first name, last name, address. You know who you're sending it to. Match rates tend to be anywhere from, say, like 40 to 50% on a good day. In some cases, it's like in the 30s. But we send about 5.5 million pieces of mail a month. So it's still a good chunk of folks that we hit on a regular basis. And then we also upload those same lists into social and target them with video and commercials. So we're, it's kind of like connected TV, but not. And what we've seen is anywhere from a 9 to 10% increase in conversion for those that are exposed to connected TV versus just mail by itself. And that tends to fluctuate, but it depends on how many exposures and how many pieces of mail we've sent somebody. But
and it helps you get over one of the limitations of CTV, which is reach, right? I mean, you know who you're after, and you can measure the impact.
Yeah, that's right. It's more about reinforcing our positioning and product in front of the right audience and trying to get push them into that consideration phase.
And we have a question. Let me turn on the mic to John Christens. Why don't you tell us who you are and who you're with, and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Steve. I'm John Christens. I'm at KSM. We're an indie media agency in Chicago. And Brad, I had a specific question for you. So you were talking about how sports is obviously a big focus, and the ratings, as we saw, tanked for many leagues, NBA in particular. And so we're looking at that with a lot of our clients too. In some cases, with the Olympics, we just shifted a lot of spend into 2021, hoping and working on negotiations for that, obviously. I'm curious to know, as we're looking at it, this is really tricky to see this year as sort of a proxy for next year, because I think a lot of the schedules, they were so compounded, right? And everything was crunched together. So you might have lost a lot of casual viewers. And so with that in mind, and knowing that 2020 is really not going to be a proxy for next year, are you still kind of keeping live sports in the mix for your linear into next year? How are you looking at that, and how are you kind of hedging your bets?
Yeah, I think, for us, it's, one of the things I like to compare is like when you think about DirecTV, right? And we find like buying on DirecTV works well for us, because I mean, there's a lot of sports there, but the big thing that you get on top of just home viewers for DirecTV is you get every bar and restaurant in America, right? They all pretty much have DirecTV because of NFL and sports. So you get this multiplier effect of, you know, when there's 50 people in a bar and the game's on, it's on DirecTV, like your commercial's going to run, right? If you're buying on DirecTV versus network. But I think that's the biggest gap for sports, right? Is, you know, restaurants and bars are not open. You know, that's kind of like where people congregate to watch sports. I think it gets people into sports a lot more versus just kind of sitting at home, or they get, you know, distracted at home, or like they're not watching, they're out doing something else, versus like, hey, I'm going to meet my crew, right, at the local bar to watch the game. I think that's where a lot of fall off has come from, you know, just from overall sports, because it's not just one sport, right? NBA's down, NHL's down, NFL's down. Like it's all down very close to the same percentages. But getting back to your question of like moving forward is, you know, I think as things open up, you know, we'll start jumping into, again, back into linear and back into sports. You know, and we're dipping in and out of news, and we're going to do some pretty heavy testing coming into the election, knowing that, you know, news is front and center for folks, you know, starting now pretty much through, you know, the mid-November.
Yeah, totally. Just staying on our toes.
Yeah.
Let me draft off of that a little bit and talk about esports. Missy, were you using esports at all as a replacement for some of your live sports franchise partnerships, and Brad too?
So we hadn't been, even though obviously being a gaming publisher, you would think that that would be an avenue that we would go down, but we actually hadn't, because we have such a strong partnership with ESPN, and it's about 10 years now. We have just embedded models where we're able to push out content with them through their sites, their apps. So that wasn't actually anything that we had explored with esports.
Yeah, we haven't done that either. Our audience is, you know, older, like, you know, it's like late 40s, early 50s is our average customer. So no esports.
Well, thanks panel. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah, you know, you guys, thank you so much. It was awesome. And it was, again, let's hope for more good things for next year, and another baby, maybe.
The COVID generation.
Yes, that is true. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, and enjoy the rest of the summit, and hopefully see you at one of the roundtables.
Thanks.
Alrighty.
Thank you.